Hi everybody, welcome back to Smart Bounce. I had the true pleasure of interviewing my Grandma Ronda. She is in her 80s. Everybody tell her how good she looks because she does. We talked for an hour and it was awesome and we covered a lot, but there's no way to cover a full person's life in that hour, and so there were important people and important events that weren't really mentioned or were kind of glossed over, and that's not because they weren't important. It's just because, again, how do you cover a long life in an hour? You don't. But it really was an honor and a privilege to interview her, and it's so special to me. So I hope you guys enjoy. I love you.
Have we started?
It is recording, but
I love you. I'm so glad you're here. Glad I got to spend some time with you.
yeah. So my YouTube channel is called Samara Builds, and it's Samara Builds a Better Life. So it's all about building a better life in the different ways we do that, because at different times of life it requires different things.
Amen, lady.
Yeah. I would love to hear all about you. So let's start with like your childhood. Would that be okay?
Sure.
Why don't you tell me where you grew up?
I was born in Salt Lake City. At that time, Tooele, which was a military ordnance basis, everybody that lived at Tooele worked there. So my mother and dad both worked at the military base, and naturally there was no daycares or babysitters, and I was the youngest of four. I have two sisters and a brother, and so we lived in Salt Lake with our grandparents.
Wow.
Yes. And my grandfather was a huge strength in my life. And I remember from being 4 years old on, he just made life safe. And he was from Greece, and he was the only grandfather I ever knew, because he married my grandmother when my dad was 12 years old. And he was a wonderful man. He taught me so many things, and I would watch him cook, and he was an amazing cook. He'd get up at 4 in the morning and cook potatoes slow until breakfast.
Oh.
He was amazing. And he was very devout to his Greek Orthodox faith. And when I found out, or when he died, my sister Dolly was 7 years older than I was. And she said, "Rhonda, do you know that he was reading the Book of Mormon before he died?" And I said, "No, I never knew that." But anyway, he was amazing. My grandmother, I was not real close to. And I remember I was always trying to irritate her, and I was successful. And when Judy and I would be outside and she'd call us in for dinner, I wouldn't come until I really wanted to come. And I remember her having a broom in her hand one day with the screen door and the door open. And as soon as I ran in, I knew she was going to try and hit me with it on my rear end. But she never got it. And I look back on it and I feel bad because I didn't feel that close to her. But I was so enamored with my grandpa.
Yeah.
He was it. He was everything.
That's really sweet.
And then we moved to Tooele. And that's where I started. I actually went back and forth to school because I remember being in the 3rd grade in Salt Lake. So I must have stayed there until maybe the 4th grade and then moved to Tooele and finished my grade school. But I always loved school, always loved it. I loved to learn, and I was a fast learner. And when I was in the 5th grade, the principal called my mother in for a meeting, and I was sitting there, and he said, "We want to advance Rhonda to the 6th grade because she's too fast." And my mother says, "No, I don't want to do that." So they didn't.
Do you know why she didn't want that?
I think she didn't want me to grow up any faster than I was. So then when I started junior high, my grandpa died. And that was very traumatic for me.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know how personal you get into these with people, do you?
Just as comfortable as you feel.
Well, because it describes a lot of how I changed. I was abused as a little girl, and that was always a trauma and a traumatic thing, far more when I became older. But anyway, so between that and my grandpa dying, and I started junior high, and I went from A's, B's to F's. And they didn't ever have any services for where you could see where a student goes from high to low.
Yeah.
So I never really regained the high grades because it just didn't matter to me anymore. I just didn't really care about much.
Yeah.
And then my mother and dad divorced. And there was a trauma before that I won't go into with my mother. But she almost died because of my father. He was an alcoholic. And when he wasn't, he was the most fun, charismatic man you'd ever be around. And he had an orchestra in Salt Lake. He was a vocalist. And I remember being 4 and 5 sitting on the bar of taverns, because that's where he played. And I learned all the songs of the big band era. Every one of them. When I hear them on the radio, I know all the words.
That's cool.
So that part of my life was, music was a big part of my life. Always was. And my sisters and brother and I used to get around the piano and always sing. We had a player piano.
Oh,
So all the words were on the roll. And
yeah.
But anyway, music was important. And that always lifted me. So when I started high school, I absolutely loved high school. I couldn't wait to get to high school every day because it was a good place for me and I felt like myself. And I was blessed to have a lot of friends. I was blessed to be popular, as you say, in high school. I was voted president for different clubs all the time, and I was queen of the FFA, and that was fun.
Can I pause and ask you a question?
You can ask me anything, babe.
After your grandpa died, did you feel like you had anybody you could talk to?
No, never did. I never felt like anybody that was taking care of me either. Never did. And that's when you've been here, and Brooke, and how incredible you are to me. I'd never had that. And I'm not, whew. I can't cry and talk, so you either have to cry or you talk. I just never felt like someone was looking out for me and caring for me. And even raising a large family like I have, I didn't have that either because I was so involved in them. I didn't want any attention to me. I wanted it on them. So when I'm spoiled, I go, whew, where did this come from? This is pretty great.
I'm so glad you let us spoil you the little bit you do.
You spoil
Because you
me.
deserve it. And you always did, and I'm sorry you didn't get it.
You know what, though? Everybody has tough stuff.
Yeah.
And you either give up on it or you plod through it. And, I wouldn't be me if I didn't keep going on all the stuff that's happened.
That's true. That's true. You're very strong.
I am. And I always was. And I'll tell you one incident when I was in the 6th grade. This boy was such a pest. And I hated boys then. They were so stupid. In very young thinking. And I was way ahead of all that. I used to love adults because they were smart and they had all this experience. Anyway, and he just kept bugging me. And he'd, come in the hall and he'd push me or, just to be a brat because I knew he wanted me to notice him. You learn that after a while.
Yeah.
And so we were outside. We had a recess all the time and playing softball and whatever it was. And I was walking back into the school, and he hit me again and pushed me, and I turned around and I said, I am so tired of you being such a pest. And I don't know how I did this, but I flipped him over my shoulder. I did. He never bothered me again. But anyway, so I was called into the principal's office because I had flipped this guy and he landed on the ground. And I told the principal, I was very honest. I said, he has been such a pest, bugging me. He bumps into me. He pushes me. I'd had it. So I wanted to let him know he couldn't do that anymore.
Oh, I love that story.
And I think I must have tried to get him in the middle, or his waist, and then lifted him. And he was taller than me. Of course, everybody was. But anyway, I had to put that in because I felt so good.
I love that. I love that. I feel like that says a lot about you. You are very strong. And people, I think, like underestimate you a lot.
They do.
Yeah.
Unless they really know me. Yeah. And then I'm the general. Oh, so what else? Question, lady.
So you really loved high school.
Oh, I did. And I met this incredible guy. He was a senior and I was a junior. And I really liked him. And we made a weak mistake. And I got pregnant. And I was so sick I was sick all the time. 24/7, didn't matter. And I thought to myself, I don't want to live like this. And I did not want to be married because I had goals I wanted to achieve later, and like everybody. And so I told him that I just couldn't do it anymore. And so I moved back with my mother. And he went on to college and a mission and all that stuff. And when I had this beautiful little boy, and he was beautiful from the time he popped out. He was. These big, beautiful blue eyes, and Joey looked a lot like Dave.
Oh.
A lot. Because he has this beautiful little face. But anyway, I never did date because I did not want to date with anybody that wasn't happy that I had this beautiful little boy. Yeah. So I didn't do it. I dated a couple times, but that taught me, nah, this isn't for me. And then, after high school, I was walking home from a 4th of July celebration and living in a small community like Tooele. I knew everybody, and I went to high school with Ramon Jones's sister. So we were close buddies. And he came home from the Marine Corps. He was in this foxy little convertible. And I was alone. I was walking home. And he pulls up to me and he says, hey, can I give you a ride home? And I said, no, I'd rather walk. And so he pulled away, and he was he was a hottie. He really was. And I thought, he's so used to all the girls saying, sure, yes, yes, yes. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want him to feel that I was that easy, especially having a little boy and a little Mormon community. It was a trial. So anyway, he called me up and asked me for a date, and I said yes, and he stood me up.
Grandpa.
Yeah, Grandpa did. And that night, because we were supposed to go at 8 o'clock, and by, I think it was around 9 or 10 or something, I got this phone call from his female cousin. And she said, Ronda, this is Karen. And she said, I got to tell you, we're here at Ramon's apartment. And he has the funny papers over his face, and he was snoring. I said, oh, Karen, can't you come up with a better one than that?
Yeah.
She said, no, honestly. He was sleeping. So he got on the phone. He says, I'm so sorry. He says, honestly, it's the truth. I just zoned out.
Yeah, one of those things.
So he called me again. He asked me for a date. We went and had pizza. And then we went to, just drove around Tooele and just talked. We talked till 3 in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
Because I'd never been around somebody that asked me all about me. And I thought, geez, what kind of a guy is this? And when he took me home, I thought to myself, I think I trust him and I don't even know him very well. Because I never trusted guys. Yeah. Never did. And he just knocked me for a loop. He did. And he asked me after, we dated heavy for like 5 or 6 months, and we got married. But anyway, prior to that, he asked me one night, he says, have you been thinking of anything serious? And I looked at him and I said, no, have you? He said, yes. He says, I love that little boy. And he said, I think that this could be something very serious. And it scared me to death because I was so guarded by what I'd been through.
Yeah.
And the more I thought about it, then I went to bed that night and I couldn't sleep. And I thought, what? I mean, I don't want to get married. I'm not ready. And this voice, as clear as you and I are talking, said to me, if you don't marry him, you will regret it for the rest of your life. And that was one of the first promptings I've ever received, and it was powerful.
Yeah.
So I said yes.
I'm glad you listened to it.
Oh, best thing I ever did. He made me feel safe, very safe. And he took such great care of me to the detriment. You know,
Yeah.
He just wanted to do everything, and he did, and he was very strong. I was strong, and it was interesting to work those things out. A lot of times I won, a lot of times he won. But anyway, he adopted Dave as soon as Dave's blood father allowed it, and because he wanted him to have the Jones name. Yeah. When we got married, we moved to Salt Lake and lived in his grandmother's apartment. We were poor as church mice, no money, no anything. He started school at the University of Utah, and he lasted 6 weeks. And this is how he went to college. Flip-flops, because he had just got out of Hawaii. Bermuda shorts at that time, and I don't even know if he wore a shirt half the time. But he was his own guy. He did.
Sure was.
He was his own guy. So one of his buddies called him one night and says, Ramon, United Airlines is calling. They're hiring pilots. Let's go. Because he was in the Marines with him. So they filled out all the papers and got it. So then we moved to New Jersey. The first time I'd ever been out, well, I'd gone to California once with my aunt and uncle. But anyway, so I'd never been anywhere.
Wow.
So here I am in New Jersey. And we had Mark.
Okay.
Because I was pregnant. I think he was born 10 months after we were married. Fertile myrtle, it was always that way. Anyway, moved to New Jersey, and it was a hellhole. The humidity was so thick, and the mosquitoes were this big, and they just feasted on me. And it was horrible.
Yeah.
So we lived in New Jersey for probably 3 months, maybe, and then he was able to transfer to Chicago.
Okay.
So we moved to Chicago. That was a great experience. We met wonderful friends in the airlines and in the church. I had Donnie then, yes, when we moved to Illinois. He was born in Illinois.
So you've got 3 little boys.
3 little boys. And we lived in the ghetto, kind of. A lot of African-American families, Mexican,
Yeah.
I don't want to say the wrong word for those because I loved them all.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was hanging some clothes in the backyard, and school was out. Mark was 5, Donnie was almost 2, and Dave was 7. And they were all walking home, and they had all these wonderful little, every color, black, Mexicans, little kids, they were all buddies. And I heard Mark, or one of the little boys, as they were coming in, F-U-C-K, F-U-C-K. And they were in 1st grade, maybe. And I looked at that, and I thought, holy crying out loud. So I grabbed them as a group. And I said, that's a very, very bad word. And I know you're all very smart, and you're all good boys, but don't use that word anymore, especially if you come to my house. And they were just,
That's a good way to say it.
But Mark's best friend was Gregory Mormon. Black as black. And I just loved him.
Mormon?
No, he had the name, but he wasn't Mormon.
Funny.
But anyway, I learned so much with Ramon because he was such an outdoors person and such a person.
Yeah.
I couldn't even count all the things that he taught me that he has no idea he taught me. We had a very difficult marriage because we had some real bumps in the road. But we had such a strong sense of family, number one, and a strong sense of, well, not a sense, but we had a very strong physical attraction to each other. We could fight like not fight, quarrel, and we'd make up, and the making up was so much better than the fighting or the quarreling. But that's how it was through most of our marriage. It was, like I said, it wasn't an easy marriage. He was hard to live with, and so was I. We were both strong-willed, but he's the best thing that ever happened to me in my entire life.
That's really sweet. So after Chicago, you came to Washington?
Yes. And
you had 3 girls?
No, Heidi was born here.
Oh, okay.
In Washington. Marcy was 18 months old, and Stacy was they're 18 months apart, so she was a baby, and I was nursing her.
Oh my gosh.
And we had this Cadillac car, and I made the whole back seat a whole bed. And I was driving, and he was driving the truck and camper.
Oh my gosh.
With the boys. I don't know how I did it.
No, I
but
don't
you
know
do
how
it.
you did that.
But you do it. So we drove from Chicago to Washington. But there's a lot of memories of the boys in school too. Dave was an outstanding athlete. Fast. I used to love to watch him run. He was like a deer, just pew. Not tall, but he had the speed. And Mark was the intellect. He was the one that was very different. And I didn't understand him a lot of times, and I didn't know why, because I could read all of my kids. Well, Donnie was the social one, like his dad.
I could see that, yeah.
They were wonderful boys. They remind me so much of Sarah's boys. I watch them and I think, wow, that's how it was. They were all good boys and wonderful boys, very obedient. Of course, her dad was a Marine, so that was easy. He was very strict with them, very, very strict. Yeah. So when we moved to Washington, Dave was a sophomore, Mark was in the 8th grade, and Donnie was in the 6th grade, something like that. A few years later, when they grew up a little bit, we were at the kitchen table, and my boys were in the back, and we were clearing the table up, actually, and Marcy was probably 10, maybe 9, Stacy 7, Heidi 5. And Ramon looked at Marcy and said, I want you to do this. And she looked at him and she put her hands on her hips and she said, that is the most unreasonable request. I won't do it. And the boy's eyes got this big. And I heard Dave say, that's not the dad we had. And so he knew he'd had it, because girls and a dad are a total different story.
Yeah.
And it was fun to watch it. And having sons, you get to know the male mind, because we're very different. And I was grateful because I could understand Ramon so much more through his boys. And then when we had girls, it's the same thing for him.
Yeah.
Because
yeah,
women are a different breed. And so it really helps when you're blessed to have both, because it helps you understand the differences in so many ways.
Yeah. And I'm like, as you know, kids are just born with their own personality. And so I'm sure seeing his personality traits and your personality traits in such little kids helps too.
Yeah. So living in Washington I loved it. I loved it from the day I came here. I loved the rain. I loved the gray. Ramon hated it. The boys hated it. The girls hated it. But anyway, I was very fortunate to financially not have to work. And that was a blessing to me because my mother had to work and provide for all four of us.
Yeah.
Because she was divorced. And she was a hard worker and she was a good mother. But she was, you know, just like when I watch Brooke, my granddaughter, come home from a full day of nursing, how exhausted that is. And my mother used to come home that same way. And she'd still cook a dinner for four of us. And I used to watch her and think, why is she so ornery all the time? And then when I grew up, I realized, yeah, she's supporting all of us. That's what she's doing.
Yeah.
But anyway, when I married, I want to go back on this part too, because this is a big part of me. And here I am. It's all about me.
Yes, it is.
When I met my future father-in-law, I fell instantly in love with him. I loved him like I loved my grandpa. I mean, it was instant. And he loved me, and I knew it. And I felt so good. And Ramon's mother was a different situation. She was not, she never did accept me for a lot of years. I loved his father. So we were talking one night. This was before we were married, actually, and I was dating. No, it was after we were married, because we always had these wonderful talks. And I said to him one night, I said, you know, I was raised in Tooele, as you know, and I said, I was so against the Mormon church. I said, I was so turned off by the Mormons in high school. And at that period of time, there was a strong culture of the Mormon church. And the doctrine of the doctrine of the church wasn't even around. Yeah. It was always I came across the plains, my grandma and grandpa, very narrow-minded thinking people.
Yeah.
And very judgmental. And I said, I would never be a Mormon. I said, until I met you. I said, you're the first Mormon that I've ever met that is so loving, so accepting of all people, and on and on. And he said, well, do you want to learn more? I said, yes, I do. So he set up the missionaries. They came and they taught me. And when I learned in those discussions that I was truly a daughter of a Heavenly Father, that almost blew me away. I just thought, wow. And from then on, and the thing is when a lot of people get baptized into the faith, and if they don't learn it and study it, they don't know it. And so they leave it, or they're very judgmental of it. So I really studied, I still do. And there's so much more to it. Like Jesus Christ is the center of the whole thing. Not Joseph Smith. He was instrumental in bringing the Book of Mormon forward, but it's all about the Savior. Yeah. All about the Savior. And I never knew that at first. So it's been an interesting trip.
Yeah. It's really sweet that special relationship brought something to your life that has brought a lot of good, like a lot of support and community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it gives you reasons for a lot of things that you don't get from a worldly view. Yeah. So, and then another prompting I had, and it was crazy. I used to go to the church dances all the time because that was the only fun stuff in Tooele to do. And I walked in the church, and all of a sudden this voice, you're home. You're home, Ronda. And I looked around and thought, I said, what? What? This is not my home. And just these little promptings all along led me to what I did.
And you know that I'm not part of the church anymore, but I definitely respect that it's a big part of your life and a big part of your heart and a big part of your meaning for life. Mm-hmm. And I love that we have the kind of relationship that we can respect that for each other.
Oh, me too. I mean, the love that I have for all of my grandchildren. I mean, I would never, ever, that would never change anything.
Yeah.
Everybody should be free to choose what they want in life and what they want to do and what they believe, and I love it.
Maybe this is a good segue. I feel like we're kind of building up to some of the hardships you talked about in your relationship.
Oh.
Like all these hardships that you two came through together. I'm sure you leaned on the church, but I would like, if you feel comfortable, I'd like to hear about some of these times.
Ask me what you want to know and I'll tell you what. Where do you want me to start?
Should we start
the first accident?
Yeah.
Okay, when Stacy was a junior and Marcy was a senior, they used to go to the Young Life with a bunch of their high school friends. And they were coming back from this Young Life meeting, and it's a Christian group. And then they would come to Sacrament and church with Marcy and Stacy. Anyway, so they were coming back from this Monday night Young Life activity, and they were coming across a side road onto a main highway that was pretty busy, but it was dark. It was like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. And a pickup truck with a guy in it hit them when they were crossing this main highway. And Stacy was behind the driver. Marcy was with her in the back. They were all belted. And Marcy and Stacy, basically, I don't know how it happened because they were belted, but they banged against each other, and they both had broken clavicles and extreme bruising. But Stacy was the only one that was seriously injured. She was in a coma. The driver of the car was, I would say she'd been driving maybe about 6 or 7 months.
Oh, wow.
And she was one of Stacy's close buddies. And anyway, so I get a call at 10:30 at night from the hospital. And they said, we have your daughter, Marcy Jones, here. She's been in an accident, but she's alert, awake. And I said, well, what about my other daughter, Stacy? Well, we don't have record of her. And so immediately I called Dave, and he just freaked out. He says, I'll meet you at the hospital. And he had been working at Harborview at the time in the OR, emergency section. And he knew. And when he found out that she was in a coma, he just went, oh. He was a lot of support for me. And Irv was on a flight, naturally. Ramon, I don't want to call him Irv. And they called him, and they flew him home immediately. He was in Alaska. And it was a total, complete, horrible, horrible nightmare. But when I got to the hospital, I said, you don't have record of my other daughter, Stacy? And they said, well, she has no ID on her or anything, but this might be her. And it was her. She was, in a coma. Oh, boy. I've never been able to write about it because I don't like to go there. Yeah. But I can talk about it. But to write about it, you get more in detail and you're really deeper thinking. And it was hell. What can I say? And I had a girlfriend that was a nurse that happened to be on duty at the hospital where they eventually took Stacy. And she brought me a heated blanket. She says, Ronda, I want you to come in this room. Nobody's in this room. It's, a bed. I want you to lay down and I want you to put this blanket on you and just try to relax. This is nothing that you have done wrong. These horrible things happen. I mean, she was just, I'll never, ever forget her. And so for 6 months, 24/7, I was either there, and most of the time I was, or close friends. She was never alone, ever, because I knew she'd wake up. I don't want her to be alone if she wakes up. And this is when Heidi, my youngest daughter, went through hell and back, and I didn't even know it. She had real abandonment issues because I was never there. and she was 12 years old, which is a very delicate age. Anyway, I always knew that Stacy was going to come out of that coma. I just knew it. I just knew it. And we had doctors and stuff always coming in and checking on her and stuff like that. But this one time there was a neuropsychologist. And he came in the room and he said, "Mrs. Jones, I want to understand why you're doing so well." He said, "Most families would collapse under this." And he says, "I want you to know she'll be a vegetable. And I want you to get on with your life." And I looked at him and I said, "I don't ever want you coming in this room again. I don't like your negative thoughts, because Stacy is receiving those subconsciously. I know that. So don't ever come in here, because I don't believe anything you're saying." And he never did come back. But you know, when there's a brain injury, it's almost a zero chance of anything. So you don't have a lot of positiveness going on.
Yeah.
And so I fought for that. I prayed for that, and I got it. I knew I was gaining this help and this strength. And anyway, it was after 6 months, we moved her to a rehab in Seattle called the Greenery, and I don't even think that exists anymore. It was for brain injury. Oh. And she came out of her coma. I guess we moved her there before 6 months, because I definitely remember it was 6 months to the day. And I always go in and I would talk to her. I had her cheerleading outfits. I had big posters. I had everything all over the walls. And I would always put either vinegar or something that smelled horrible under her nose to see if she'd wake up.
Yeah.
And so one day I was there, and Dave was there, and so was his wife, Sandra. And Dave was on one side of the bed, Sandra was on the other, and I was by Dave. And I just would stroke Stacy's forehead. I say, "Honey, you've been in this horrible car accident, but you're going to be okay." And her eyes opened. But they opened before that, but she didn't track. They just opened, and then they'd close, and then they'd open again. But this time she opened her eyes, and she turned right to Dave. I said, "Stacy, do you see Dave?"
Oh my God.
And then she turned and looked at Sandra, and I said, "Do you see Sandra?" She said, "Yes." I mean, didn't say yes, but she, and I ran out into the hall, hollering. All these nurses, I said, "Stacy's out of her coma." And they looked at me like I was nuts.
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, that's good." And I thought, oh. But from then on, I made her spelling board, because she always had an incredible mind. I asked her everything about her life. She was in a German class in high school, and I even had a German book.
Oh,
and I would ask her what this means, what that means, or I would give her multiple choices, anything to see what's in there. Mm-hmm. And it was all there.
That's amazing.
And that's a miracle in itself, to have her mind completely there.
Yeah.
Especially with the brain injury. But it affected her body to where, you know, the connection to the brain and the muscles. That's all it is, because she was never paralyzed.
Yeah.
And yet, anyway.
I just have to say, that story made me think about you in the 6th grade, throwing that boy over your shoulder. That's what you did with the doctor that said, "You should give up.
Yeah.
She's going to be a vegetable." Mm-hmm. So you've always been that strong woman, girl, person that says, "I'm not going to take this shit."
Got it. I got that from my mother. She was that way. But I'm glad that she did. We just call it the German grit.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's been a horrible thing, and it's still there. Mm-hmm. But she's an amazing, she lifts me higher than anybody on this planet, because she's so positive. And she sent, or she gave Marcy her birthday card a few days ago, and Marcy was there with her alone. And in this card, and Stacy would tell the caregiver, or she would spell out on her spelling board what she wanted to say to Marcy. So the caregiver would write it on the card. And Stacy said, "Marcy, I am so happy you were not hurt as bad as I was." But I love my life. That's Stacy.
That's powerful. So I've had this interview done for like 6 weeks, and I have tried so many times posting it to YouTube, and it will only do the first 30 minutes. And I have scoured the internet looking for answers. I tried having my boyfriend help me, he's very good at like computers and technology and everything, and I can't do it. So I'm splitting it into 2 parts and finally posting it. So go watch part 2.